Hello and welcome to Uniquely Louisville and the Michter's Distillery here at Fort Nelson. If there is one thing that is unique about Louisville, it is the passion and affinity we all have for bourbon and the bourbon industry. Well, here at Michter's, it's all about the whiskey and maybe just a little bit more. So when you visit Michter's Fort Nelson at 8th and Main in downtown Louisville, you may be lucky enough to run into Vicki Fugit. She is the Director of Hospitality, and she will welcome you, and she's going to inform us all about this experience. Okay, Vicki, there's a lot of distilleries. So tell me about some of the experiences you offer here.
Sure, so we offer 3 tours for our guests. The Discovery Tour, which is an introduction into Michter's, our processes, what we do, how we make the greatest American whiskey. We also have our Founders Tour, which is offered 2 times a week. That's a deeper dive into the distillation process, and you get to hear information from our distillery operators as well as your tour guide. And then we have our Legacy Tour. So our Legacy Tour is offered once a month on a Saturday, and that is with a senior production of Michter. So you've got Dan McKee, our master distiller. You have Andrea Wilson, our master of maturation. So it's somebody that's going to take you through the really, really intricate parts of our production process.
And we are lucky enough to be talking to some of those folks today, so this is going to be great. So there's a lot of distillery tours, of course, in Louisville and in Bardstown. What makes Fort Nelson unique? What do you offer that's really unique here?
Well, one of the greatest things about our tours, especially the Legacy Tour, is we offer very rare expressions. So you might try our 20-year bourbon or a 25-year bourbon. So that is a huge selling point for these tours.
Wow, I love that. And Uniquely Louisville loves unique experiences, watching, seeing, experiencing it. You do something very special with the bottling process. So
Yes.
Tell me about that.
Okay, so we have 2 opportunities for special bottling. One of them is our Fort Nelson Select, which we've actually made for you all today. So it says Uniquely Louisville, which is the name of your show,
yes.
right?
Yes.
So you can label your bottle as well as put a label on the back of the box. So this is a great opportunity to gift to somebody. We've had people for bachelorette parties, bachelor parties, retirement gifts, but this is a great opportunity to do something special for a guest.
Wow, Vicki, what a great host you are. I mean, I'm actually blushing. This is fantastic. So, again, when you come in here to Fort Nelson here, Michter's Distillery and Bar, make sure you say hello to Vicki Fugit. Vicki, this is fantastic, and I love about all of the tours and experiences you talked about. But let's say someone wants to just get out on the town or show a friend a nice place to go. They can just go to the bar, right?
Absolutely. Reservations are recommended. If you'd like to, you could go to resi.com to make a reservation 2 weeks in advance of the date you want to visit, but you're also welcome to walk in.
All right, so once again, this is really nice of you. You had a machine do this, right? So they can do this for anyone.
Yes,
okay.
Absolutely. But we have something even cooler than this. We have our Fort Nelson Reserve, which is an opportunity to fill your own bottle of barrel strength bourbon. You fill out the label for your bottle and the box, and you take it home and it's yours.
Wow, now that sounds magical. Can we see where the magic happens?
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
All right.
I'm taking this with us.
Come on.
Michter's has won just about any award that whiskeys or bourbons can receive from around the world. Included in that, in 2023, they were voted the world's most admired whiskey. And I tell you what, I'm going to put some emphasis on that because that's the first time an American whiskey has won that award. It's very prestigious. With me now, He's in large part the reason for this, and that is Dan McKee, who is the master distiller here. Dan, welcome in.
Welcome. Thank you.
You know, I love talking to you because there's so many folks here who watch us on Uniquely Louisville, and they say, I want to learn. And learning about bourbon, I think everyone wants to. This whole bourbon craze, bourbonism that's going on, man, you got to love it.
Yeah, I've been doing this now over 18 years. This is what I was meant to do.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because I find it interesting, your resume. Talk a little bit about, I know you have experience with Jim Beam and some of your mentors in this industry. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, you know, this whole journey in the bourbon industry has just been amazing. You know, again, going back over 18 years, I had the opportunity to join Jim Beam as a distillery operator, where I worked for a couple of years, and then I had the opportunity to become a distillery supervisor at the Jim Beam Booker No Distillery. So for those 9 years, you know, I had the opportunity to work with a lot of great people that had 10 years to 40 plus years experience. I learned a lot. And while I was there, I was working under Pam Heilman for a while, who eventually became Michter's second master distiller. And, you know, she was a big part in mentoring me and so forth. And then when I did get the opportunity to come to Michter's as our distillery manager during the construction of the new distillery in Shively, Kentucky, that's when Willie Pratt was our first master distiller, continuing to work under Pam Heilman. And then, of course, working with our master of maturation, Andrea Wilson, also has been great. And, of course, we have a great team here at Michter's.
You do. There is a culture here that really speaks to excellence. As master distiller, I think it seems to me that you guys have this balance down pat of tradition of the way bourbon was initially made and innovation. That's important, isn't it? You were talking to me about this big copper steel that is behind us, our backdrop here. That's old school, but that's still very effective, right?
Oh, very effective. You know, and that's one of the great things about Michter's. First and foremost, we're a company about quality over quantity. Both our distillation systems, whether it's at our Shively Distillery or here at the Michter's Fort Nelson Distillery, is 100% copper. So in Shively, we're using a continuous column still to a doubler pot still. That column still is traditional here in Kentucky, but then when you do go old school, you know, we have the legendary pot-to-pot still system that we're using again here at Fort Nelson Distillery that actually was originally used and handcrafted in 1976 by none other than Vendome, who is a local company here in Louisville, known worldwide though for their quality and craftsmanship. But it was originally used at the Schaefferstown, Pennsylvania Michters. Years back, we were able to purchase them and then put them back in production, which is awesome to have a bit of history here.
Wow, it is a trip down memory road, but also the innovation is interesting as well. We hear a lot when we talk about bourbon about flavor profiles.
Yep.
So what goes into a flavor profile? Is it something that's very trendy, or are there classic flavor profiles?
I think there's classics, but definitely innovation is a big part of it. You know, just starting out at the very beginning, you know, your grain selection. Here at Michter's, we're using the highest quality grains. They're U.S. grade #1, non-GMO. You know, our typical mash bill is going to be corn, rye, malted barley, like with our U.S. 1 lineup with our small batch bourbons, our U.S. 1 single barrel Kentucky straight rye, and so forth. So that's very important to us. But you know, that flavor profile starts with grain selection, the percentage of each grain that you're going to use in the mash bill, right? Your mashing process, your fermentation style, what yeast did you use? Did you use a yeast that generates a lot of like fruity notes or maybe floral notes and so forth? And then the distillation process. Are you going to use that continuous column still to doubler pot still or the traditional pot to pot still system? You know, those create different flavor profiles also. And that's the beauty of, you know, the Fort Nelson Distillery. Not only are we making the bourbons and the ryes, but we've also treated this as, you know, a spot where we can do innovation, trying different mash bills, different grains, different types of yeast. And, you know, and if we're really encouraged and like the distillate being produced, even though it will have a different flavor profile coming off the pot stills, then it's an opportunity to take it to the Shively Distillery and produce it at a much larger scale.
Wow. As master distiller, I bring up the word excellence a lot, and excellent. It has to be nice for you in that Michter's is very particular about the grade of corn and anything that goes into that whiskey, whether it's the water, any of the distilling process. It's the very best. It's not about time, it's not about money, it's about give us the best, give us excellence, correct?
Yes, I mean, again, we're using that highest quality. We are paying a premium to have that U.S. grade #1 non-GMO designation for that. But all along, you know, being here in Jefferson County, having access to the highest quality water used in our process, all the way through, again, working with Vendome to have 100% copper distillation system. That copper helps create a very clean but flavorful distillate on its way to the maturation side of it.
And you have your own cornfields in Springfield, Kentucky, right?
We do have a 205-acre farm in Springfield, Kentucky. We're working with a local farmer to grow estate-grown grains. The goal is for those grains to be used here at the Fort Nelson Distillery. Some of them have been used at the Shively Distillery. But just like everything, if a harvest comes up that the grains don't meet our qualifications, we will actually fail them and not use them.
Wow. Yeah. Your level of knowledge and expertise is amazing. So I'm curious, for someone who may be watching Uniquely Louisville now and they've got Derby guests coming in and they want to come off as a bourbon aficionado, what kind of advice would you give them? What things should they know about bourbon that they can pass along?
Well, I think just as a high level look at bourbon and our rye categories, but to be a bourbon, it has to be a distilled spirit fermented from a mash consisting of at least 51% corn. It cannot be distilled over 160 proof. And that distillate cannot be entered into a barrel higher than 125 proof. It has to be entered into a new charred oak container, which would be the barrel. And then once it's aging, it can't be entered into a bottle less than 80 proof. And that's kind of the general guidelines for a bourbon. If it's a rye whiskey, it has to have at least 51% rye grain in the mash bill.
Wow.
But coming to Kentucky, that's the best place to learn about making bourbon.
There you go. Yeah. So the king and Michter's being the absolute very best. So you guys are known as innovators too. For instance, your toasted bourbons, you're the first to do it. Now a lot of folks are trying to copy that a little bit. With that being said, are there any innovations or trends, Dan, as a master distiller that you see that you're excited about?
There's many trends, but trends that I can't talk about.
There you go. Yeah, don't let out any secrets there, Dan.
Yeah. But the toasted barrel finish has been something we're very proud of. Back in 2014, we were the first distillery to do this. We took our US 1 Kentucky Straight Bourbon after it was fully matured in a new toasted charred American white oak barrel. We then removed it from that barrel and entered it into a new toasted uncharred American white oak to really create a very beautiful profile, additional brown sugars, toasted campfire notes. Again, it's an exceptional whiskey, and then we've done that now with our barrel strength rye and original sour mash whiskey.
What I love about bourbon, and I think a lot of folks watching would agree, is it stimulates all the senses. I mean, the smells, the beautiful colors, everything about bourbon speaks to Kentucky heritage. For instance, I don't know what these are that we're in front of here, but the smell has kind of got a little banana to it. It's bubbling. I'm assuming this is something fermenting here, right?
Well, yeah, since we're here at the Fort Nelson Distillery and we have the legendary pot-to-pot still system, these are our 3 cypress wood fermenters that came with the distillation system. They're open top, but yeah, it's the grains fermenting. It's that yeast, metabolizing those sugars, creating that alcohol, those congeners, those flavor compounds. This is what I love. I love being in the distillery.
I love your passion. I wish I had one of those like earpieces when I'm with my bourbon buddies and I had you on the other end so I can sound like I'm so knowledgeable. I'll go, okay, Dan, what am I looking at here? Talk to me. Because the knowledge is amazing.
Yeah.
I have my last question for you, because I would think you have to be so proud to be voted the world's most admired whiskey. And folks, this is an unbiased, this isn't weighted by advertising or anything. These are for folks around the world who are experts at bourbons and whiskeys. The most admired whiskey in the world. How much does that mean to you as master distiller? You can own that.
It's a huge honor. I mean, it was voted on an Academy of Voters from over 23 countries. Just knowing that, first of all, it's not myself, it takes a whole team, right? When I first started with Michter's, I believe I was employee number 8, and now we're just under 100 employees that it took to achieve that, which is truly amazing. We have such a great team here with different skill sets, talents. It's amazing to be a part of that.
See, now you see the leadership and excellence right here in Dan McKee. Okay, Dan, before I let you go now, I've never asked you to do this, but before we leave here, you're going to sign a bottle for me, right?
It'd be my honor.
Dan McKee, master distiller here at Michter's. Yes, indeed, the world's most admired whiskey. Whenever you hear bourbon connoisseurs talk about fine whiskeys, they'll mention and put a lot of emphasis on the aging process. With me now is Andrea Wilson, and she is bourbon royalty because she's a member of the Kentucky Bourbon Hall of Fame. Should I do this? Should I curtsy? What do I do? I mean,
No, that's not necessary. Not necessary.
Andrea Wilson, you are a member of the Kentucky Bourbon Hall of Fame and the master of maturation, which to me is all about the aging process, right?
That's right. The barrel is actually the final ingredient in the making of whiskey. So it's not just about what all the good things the master distiller does, you know, everything from the grain coming in all the way through actual distillation. But then once we have that beautiful clear spirit, it's about how the barrel is going to transform that into what we all know and love as beautiful Kentucky bourbon and Kentucky rye.
Wow, you articulate that very well. It makes me thirsty for bourbon right now. Okay, so I'm thinking, okay, you mentioned the barrels. Also, temperature has a lot to do with it as well, right?
Yeah, so the role of master maturation really looks after all of the barrel procurement, all of the barrel specifications. In the case of Michter's, we naturally season and air dry all of our wood for at least 18 months to not only physically season the wood and dry it, but to also chemically and microbiologically change the wood. We also toast all of our barrels before we char them. We also heat cycle our warehouses. We're also responsible for low entry proof into the barrel, so the proof at which we enter the spirit into the barrel for aging. Of course, we don't do all of these things by ourselves. We have an amazing team of individuals who help us achieve and work with all of our cooperages to help us achieve that perfect barrel specification for the making of Michter's.
All right, you said a word there that really caught my ear. You said chemical, and you actually have a chemical engineering degree. So does that, I would imagine that comes in handy here, doesn't it? Yes.
Maybe.
Maybe. Quite a bit, right?
Yeah, I hold a master's in engineering from the University of Louisville in chemical engineering. So very proud of that, and very proud of the fact that I've been able to learn the fundamentals that really are essential in the making of great Kentucky bourbon and Kentucky rye. You know, I always say in this industry, details matter and decisions matter, and there are many, many variables, and that's why Kentucky bourbon is so beautiful, because we're not all doing it the same way. But certainly my degree has been very valuable to me.
You know, talking to you and your team and your master distiller, Dan McKee, and others, it becomes very apparent that the culture is really important here. You worked for a large spirit company called Diageo, and I'm in no way insulting them. They're a very prestigious company. But with that being said, there is a Michter's way. There is something different about Michter's. Articulate that a little bit, if you would, Andrea.
Yeah, I think that Michter's, first of all, we're a family-owned business. This is you know, something, we work for a family that's super passionate about making the best American whiskey. That's not a marketing tagline. That's how we come to work every day, trying to do our very best to make the best American whiskey that we can. And we practice a lot of old philosophies, a lot of old traditions in this industry. We're a very traditional brand, but some of these things, like we enter into the barrel at a low proof of 103, which means we're about 75% whiskey in the barrel and about 25% water. That water gives us a tremendous advantage to break down a lot of the water-soluble compounds from the barrel, like wood sugar, that really enhance the quality of the final product to give us a smooth, rich, easy drinking whiskey. Instead of, we've all had that experience of something that burns you here. Okay. We want you to just warm you here and have the elegance as that whiskey dances across your palate, that it really brings a great drinking experience.
Oh, so you're educating me on what it takes to be. Everybody talks about this whiskey is smooth, and there you said, okay, here's what it's going to take to be smooth. Okay. We talk a lot here in Louisville about bourbonism and the bourbon industry, and because you're also COO, the Chief Operating Officer here at Michter's, tell me a little bit about your thoughts on bourbon internationally, some markets opening up, and I think, and I'm sure you do as well, it's really got legs. If anything, bourbon's going to become bigger. Am I right?
Yeah.
It's hard to believe.
We all hope for that. I mean, Kentuckians have always known about Kentucky bourbon, and we love our Kentucky bourbon, yes. You know, but now the opportunity to really grow that opportunity even outside the boundaries of the United States is so exciting. And Michter's was voted in October of last year the most admired whiskey in the world by Drinks International. And we were very honored to achieve that But even more importantly, for the American whiskey category overall, it was a recognition that American whiskey is now on par with the finest scotches and cognacs and whiskeys of the world, which is really, really exciting for us as a brand and for the American whiskey category. So the future is bright.
Yes, it is, and the only time an American whiskey has won that award, so congratulations to you. One other thing I wanted to mention to you that I think is really important, you're a pioneer. I mean, there's not a lot of females in the industry, but thanks to people like you, it is now growing. That group of females in the bourbon industry is growing, and you're a member of the Kentucky Bourbon Hall of Fame. There has to be some pride in that, in being an innovator and one of the first females. Do you feel that? Do you feel it, or is it old hat to you?
No, I mean, it's a tremendous honor to be recognized by the industry for the contributions that I've made, and hopefully, what I'm also tasked with, not just as an individual, but as a team of people in this industry, we want to encourage the next generation of producers. And the more diverse your team can be, the more representative of a great global climate where you have consumers all over the world who are enjoying whiskey because of its quality and because of its beauty. And I think that's really what the power of all of this is for me. And I'm very honored to be recognized by the Kentucky Distillers Association. I'm very honored to represent Kentucky Bourbon, and I'm very honored for people to be enjoying Kentucky Bourbon and Kentucky Rye all over the world in their most special moments. I think that's very exciting, and it brings a lot of joy.
Well, you deserve all the accolades. Now, from what I understand, this show is uniquely Louisville, so I want a unique experience. Can you offer that for me?
I absolutely can. We have an amazing, unique experience here in our bottle fill system where guests are able to come and fill their own bottle of a very special product that we only release here in Kentucky, which is the Michter's Barrel Strength Bourbon. It's only available in Kentucky. You can't get it anywhere else, and it's a beautiful, you get to bottle your own product.
I can't wait.
It's fun.
We are all aware that Michter's is the world's most admired whiskey, but hey, taste is right here, baby. This is what it's all about, because tasting is believing. With me now, of course, once again, we got Dan McKee, who is the master distiller, and the master of maturation is Andrea Wilson. Okay, Andrea, I'm going to let you lead this off. These are your expressions. Is that what you call them?
Yes,
okay.
That's right.
And you're going to do me a little bit of a comparison thing here, right?
Yes,
okay.
Yes, we are.
All right, lead the way.
But first, before we do anything, I always like to encourage people, before you taste whiskey, always make sure to take a sip of water first.
And the reason being, just clean the palate?
You always want to have a nice moist palate before you experience whiskey. Never want to drink whiskey on a dry palate. It just intensifies the experience. So always start with a little bit of water. Then we're going to do a comparison. So I mentioned earlier about the low entry proof of Michter's at 103. We're going to compare that to a product that we do not release to the market, but it's our bourbon entered into the barrel at 125 proof, which is the allowable under the law. It's the maximum entry proof under the law that you can enter into the barrel. We've aged them both. They're the exact same age. They've been reduced to bottling strength of 91.4 proof. So the only variable here is the entry proof into the barrel. So it's for you to experience what's the difference. So We'll remove the lids on 1 and 2, or the little toppers here on 1 and 2.
Okay.
And what we're going to do first is we're going to compare them on nose. So I always encourage people, swirl it in the glass. And it's not wine, so you don't want to put your nose all the way into the glass, but you just want to waft it back and forth underneath your glass. And start to think about, what are you smelling and what is it triggering memories of flavors or smells that you've had before. And then when you're ready, you want to take a sip, and I always tell people, make sure you coat your whole palate. If you just touch the front of your tongue, you're only going to get sweet. So you want to have a full flavor experience. Okay, so now we're ready to take a sip, and so we're going to, and then swallow, and then what you experience is the finish. And so we hope that it warms you here and doesn't burn you here, but you're going to start to experience all those flavors across your palate now. And that's the experience of drinking whiskey.
Very smooth.
Yeah.
Now, from what I understand, Andrea, tell me if I'm wrong. Do women have a more sophisticated taste palate? Can they distinguish profiles and different flavors better than men?
That is, I am in the science field. I'm obviously a chemical engineer, but from a biological perspective, it's my understanding that women do have more flavor receptors because of the need to be the nurturers, back in a long time ago.
Okay. Well, and what you're saying too is Dan's wife has really good taste because of this handsome guy, You know what I'm saying? Okay. So now
I second that.
There you go. So what are we comparing now here with the second one?
So now we're going to compare to the exact same bourbon, only entered into the barrel at 125 proof, which we don't sell. But we just want to have people understand, why does low entry proof matter? So we'll do this one, and then just think about what the differences are: nose, palate, and finish.
I'm not smelling as much here, but okay.
All right, so let's give it a taste. And so the question is one a little bit sharper, maybe a little thinner, maybe doesn't have the same level of aroma?
One is the winner for me. I mean, as far as aroma and taste. Am I on cue here, or am I off base?
You're doing a great job. The tasting's going to continue now.
Okay, thank you very much.
I mean, it's really such a great sipping bourbon. Those beautiful caramels, vanillas, touch of stone fruit, little smoky depth.
Yes.
It's a fantastic bourbon to just enjoy neat or in a cocktail. So
we actually add less water at bottling, because when we come out, because of our low entry barrel proof, we come out of wood at a lower proof, so we don't have to add as much water to get to bottling strength. So you get more of that rich goodness that developed in the barrel during the aging process.
The true taste that you're looking for. You're not watering it down in any way. Okay.
And this is a great comparison exercise to really showcase the difference of the interaction between a lower alcohol content versus a higher alcohol content with the barrel and the extractives that we bring from the wood. So.
I would think the way you do it, though, is probably more expensive, correct?
It's much more expensive. It requires more barrels and more barrel spaces to put them in. And our barrels are, very expensive because of all the extra treatments that we do on the wood to really create a beautiful whiskey product. So it is the single most expensive thing that we do. But part of the educational experience that we want guests to have here is learning about the different flavor profiles of whiskey and their experiences.
All right. What's the next move here?
So now we're going to go to the rye whiskey. So this is a Kentucky style rye, meaning we stay closer to 51% rye in the recipe, and then we build out the recipe with corn and malted barley to help really create a beautiful, really rich baking spice, but also beautiful caramel and sweetness to help balance. It's a super smooth whiskey, 84.8 proof. Same thing. Gonna smell. And then when we're ready, we're gonna give it a taste.
The spices here, Dan, I'll ask you, this is a personal preference kind of thing, isn't it? I mean, I could understand how you could have just 1 cube of ice with this because you're getting so much flavor, a little spiciness. It's kind of a holiday cocktail to me. You find? Yeah.
Well, I love rye whiskey, so I'll take it as my daily drinker if we say that. But our rye whiskey, as Andrea mentioned, is very approachable, being that Kentucky style rye. So actually it's a great rye to enjoy, but definitely I could see that Christmas, that fall feeling with that spice and so forth. It is a beautiful rye whiskey because it does still bring out some of the sweetness, those nice floral, honey, citrus notes that you would expect in a rye whiskey also. Also with the additional spice. All right, so the next one, this one is going to be our small batch original sour mash whiskey. Okay, this is not a bourbon or a rye. In the mash bill, the 3 grains, corn, rye, malted barley, are all below 51%. So there's not a dominant grain like a corn being a bourbon or a rye like a rye whiskey. It also is what we call in between. So it comes in a little sweet like you may experience with a bourbon, and it finishes with a little spice like a rye whiskey, but it's a very elegant whiskey at 86 proof. Also namesake wise, it's paying homage to when Michter's was originally in Pennsylvania. Their #1 selling whiskey in the 1970s and 80s was also called the original sour mash. This is not that exact recipe, but keeping in line that was not a bourbon or a rye either, so we're paying homage to that. This is Willie Pratt's creation, our first master distiller.
And tradition's important to you, yes. I like it.
You see that little bit of sweetness? Yep, some burnt sugars, there's, and then again, that little bit of spice, but it's really an elegant whiskey.
So here's the Willie, right?
Yeah. Cheers to Willie.
Cheers to Willie.
Cheers to Willie.
All right, what do we have with #5 here?
Alrighty. So this one is our small batch unblended American whiskey. This whiskey is very approachable. It's our lowest proof of our U.S. lineup. This one comes in at 83.4. It's a very dessert, sweet-like whiskey. It's a bourbon-style mash bill, but some of the distillate is aged in our new toasted charred American white oak, along with our once-used Michter's bourbon barrels. Those barrels are then filled, aged, and then brought back together, creating this very sweet, dessert-like profile. A lot of beautiful, again, caramels, vanillas, butterscotches. But also the reason it says unblended, we wanted to distinguish ourselves from blended American whiskeys that can add up to 80% grain neutral spirits, coloring, and flavoring. We are not, hence the unblended. This is our whiskeys in our new barrel, our once used Michter's bourbon barrel coming together. That once used Michter's bourbon barrel adds additional sweetness and really a nice roundness to the whiskey.
You know what's difficult is just to try to pick a favorite because they're all so unique.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is very, okay, smooth is overused. Very clean, is that a good definition?
Clean, flavorful.
Flavorful, yes.
One thing, again, with our whiskeys, we're trying to create a whiskey that's very rich, well balanced, has a nice warm mouthfeel, and ultimately very smooth. And I believe in the first 4 whiskeys here, we have something for everybody.
Okay, our last offering now. Apparently, it is my understanding, this is one of Andrea's favorites. So, Andrea, you're going to take the lead on #6 here?
I am. So Schenks and Baumburgers are part of our legacy series because they honor the heritage of the brand being in Pennsylvania. So the first distiller was John Schenk. Then next was Abraham Baumburger. And we get to use this as a bit of an innovation space for Dan and I and the team to do some different things. So every year there is a release year on the bottle, so you know what quote vintage you have, so to speak, or what release year you have. And this year, the 2024 release, so this is 91.2 proof. We've used some malted rye, we've used some caramel malt, and we've also aged some of the whiskey in some French oak barrels from the Vosges region of France to provide and create some different flavor profiles. So it's got some beautiful honey notes, it's got some beautiful spice characteristics, and it really is a wonderful experience to really navigate different flavor profiles, because so many people think that bourbon and rye have to be made with American white oak. This is a sour mash whiskey, so again, conforming to what Dan said, it doesn't necessarily subscribe to the requirements for bourbon and rye. It helps people understand the rules don't specify the type of oak, the type of seasoning for your wood, or whether or not you toast and char. It only says the use of new charred oak containers.
Okay.
So this is
we
a
go.
lovely whiskey, so
Lovely.
cheers.
Aha. I like your taste. Bravo. So, I think in summary here, we've got the master of maturation. We have the master distiller. I'm the master taster. Can we agree?
We agree.
We agree.
You've made me an expert here, okay? I can't encourage you enough. I'm telling you, you need to come out here to Fort Nelson, which is right on Museum Row. They were one of the first that started Whiskey Row, and certainly it is quite the experience, the bottling experience, the bar upstairs. Of course, just coming in here just speaks to the excellence that is Michter's. I want to thank Dan. Andrea, thank you as well. And again, come on in and visit them. Yes, once again, it's Michter's on Uniquely Louisville. Welcome into the bar here at Fort Nelson. I am joined now by Joe Malioco, who is the president of Michter's. And first of all, Joe, thank you for having us to your beautiful distillery, and this bar is absolutely gorgeous.
Well, thank you so much for having me on, and thank you for coming today. It's great to have you here.
You know, a big part of the experience of sipping a little bourbon with a friend is storytelling. So I thought it would be appropriate maybe if we sip a little bit and you tell me the story of Michter's.
Absolutely. So Michter's was America's first whiskey company. Actually started in 1753 in Pennsylvania, Shakerstown, Pennsylvania. It was not called Michter's at that point. It was started by a Swiss Mennonite farmer, John Schenk. It was called Schenk's. And then in the 1800s, Abe Bomberger bought it, and guess what he changed the name to? Bomberger's in the 1800s. And then it wasn't until the 20th century that in the 1950s, a gentleman, Lou Foreman, was heading up the company, and he changed the name yet again of this Pennsylvania distillery. And he had two kids, Michael and Peter, put the names together, Michter's. A lot of people think it's a German name, it's not. It's just two kids' names. And made some really interesting, good whiskeys. And unfortunately though, like in the 70s and 80s, what we call the brown goods business, the whiskey business in the United States got very, very bad. And Pennsylvania Michter's went bankrupt in '89. In the 1990s, our group was looking to get a company, Chatham, the parent of Michter's, off the ground. And we had nothing to sell that anybody wanted. And so, and American whiskey in the 90s was really out of favor. But we thought, if we do maybe an American rye, because there was very little rye on the market in those days, it might be like a really good little niche for a small company. It was too big for the big guys to worry, too small for the big guys to worry about. But for a little company, it might help us keep the lights on. And so, we wanted to start a whiskey company, and I was familiar with the name Michter's because I had actually sold Michter's as a summer job for the New York distributor of Michter's. I was familiar with all the great Pennsylvania history. The brand had been out of business, company went bankrupt in '89. And after a lot of due diligence, we saw that the brand was not in use. And in the 1990s, we were able to acquire and become owner of the brand by filing in the Patent and Trademark Office and paying a $245 fee. So
$245.
$245. But we had a name. We had no whiskey. We had no whiskey stocks, no recipes, no packaging. I mean, nothing. Just a name. And our group got set to work on it.
Wow, so it's a great story because how much, 200 and what, what's that, Joe?
$245.
Now to the world's most admired whiskey in the world, the most admired whiskey, unbelievable. So it's a great story. Let's talk a little bit about the combination of tradition and innovation, because that's not only true with your whiskey and what makes it so excellent, but it's also true with this building here at Fort Nelson. Tell us a little bit about that combination and how it's important to you.
Yeah, you know, we've been really blessed with. I've been blessed to work with amazing people, like our first Kentucky master distiller. And one of the first decisions, by the way, was you know, you have this great brand with a great Pennsylvania legacy, and Pennsylvania's a wonderful state. But you know, do you restart it in Pennsylvania or do you restart it in Kentucky? And I was being advised by one of my mentors in the industry, Dick Newman, who had been president of Austin Nichols Wild Turkey in those days. And he said, Joe, you know, if you want to be one of the best someday, you got to play with the best. And there's no place for the whiskey business in the United States like Kentucky. And so, you know, I thank goodness every day that I listened to him, and that we set up in Kentucky, and specifically Louisville, which has just been an amazing home for Kentucky Michters. It's been just a terrific place. But you know, I've been fortunate to work with people like Willie Pratt, you know, currently Andrea Wilson, you know, Rick Robinson, you know, Dan McKee, Matt Bell. I mean, wonderful people. And you know, our goal, we always say our goal, whether we're doing it or not, the goal is to try to produce the greatest American whiskey. And we kind of combine historic, you know, techniques. You know, we enter the barrel at a lower proof, which is something that historically, you know, dates back to the 1800s. We do a lot of things that are very traditional. At the same time, we're always experimenting. You know, we were, for example, like, you know, we were the first company in 2014 to ever do a toasted barrel finished whiskey. And we had no idea we were creating a category at that point. But we've been blessed with just really, really talented people and just a great team.
And now you're known as the best of the best. And what you have done for Louisville as far as your impeccable reputation and bringing bourbon lovers from around the world, but also for the Louisville landscape. Because when it comes to Whiskey Row, when you came aboard, it didn't exist. You were the pioneer of Whiskey Row. Tell us about that story in this building.
Yeah, well, I mean, I always loved architecture. Took a lot of architecture courses in college. And, you know, I remember the day I saw this building because it was 11 degrees Fahrenheit. It was 2011. And I walked into this building, and you literally, they had planks across the joist. You could look down and see the rubble in the basement, or you could look up and see literally the roof. And apparently with one of the former owners, when the roof leaked and the floors rotted, rather than repair things, I thought a better solution was just rip out the floors, but the building lost its structural integrity. And that was a real problem. The building had been vacant for decades when we bought it. You know, we always joked that we were the first ones to announce a downtown distillery in many, many years, and we were the last ones to open. Because it took us 8 years to renovate. We had no idea that it would take us so long to renovate. But you know, structurally, by ripping out the floors, the joists had shifted, and the West 8th Street wall of the building, at the top, the brick was 23 inches out of place, which created a very dangerous situation. You know, we had to build a roughly $500,000 temporary structure just to make the building safe for people to work, you know, repairing it inside. So it took a lot of work. It took us 8 years. It was way more than we expected, but now that it's done, we're really, you know, excited about it and proud about it. It's a wonderful home for the brand.
You know, I've got to salute you, because not only were you a visionary when it comes to Michter's bourbon and making it the most admired whiskey in the world, but also this building. I mean, you're coming in here and you're walking on planks and you're seeing a leaky roof, and yet you had a vision, and now you've accomplished that. Talk to me a little bit, if you would, because this experience would not be what it is without the whiskey, without the taste, the cocktails. The cocktails you curate here are really world class, because when I drink a cocktail, I want an experience, and that's important to you, isn't it?
Whiskey is really enjoyable to a lot of people, and the thing is, the camaraderie and the experience, and that's really something very, very important to us. And you know, so at Fort Nelson, and by the way, you know, when almost everybody I met in Louisville said to me, I almost bought that building. And they almost bought that building because they were smarter than me. But as I said, now that it's done, we're very, very happy with it. We have educational tours here. We love to have people visit us. We have people visit us from literally all over the world, as well as all our local friends. You know, we do tastings here, but the bar at Fort Nelson is a really special place. And Dallas and the team do an unbelievable job here, in my opinion. We're very fortunate. We have a literally world-class cocktail program. And it's the classic cocktails are curated by Dr. Dave Wondrich. Dave was a professor at NYU University before he decided to make drinks. And when Oxford University decided to do a guide to spirits and cocktails, a few years ago, they picked Dave to be their editor-in-chief. So he curates our classic cocktails. And Dallas and the team have done just an absolutely brilliant job of some really special, creative, modern cocktails, and in fact, our menu recently switched again. But it's just really nice to have people come here and visit, and it's also good for us to get to know people like Michter's.
Yes, world-class cocktails, and really a world-class experience because of the people, because of the quality of the bourbon, because of the mixologists that are here. Congratulations on your culture, what you have built. I know you have a distillery as well in Chavley. This is kind of the boutique of your distilleries, but it is beautiful, both of them. Nothing but good, delicious, quality, world-class, the most admired whiskey in the world. Joe, congratulations, and thanks for spending time with us.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
We're now going to give you a chance to experience those cocktails because we've got the man behind the bar. He is a mixologist, world-class, Dallas.
Thanks for joining me in Michter's Bar at Fort Nelson today. My name is Dallas White and I'm the head bartender here. I'm gonna walk you through making a Boulevardier today. So we're gonna start with our sweet vermouth. We're using Cocchi di Torino. It's got a nice rich body, but a nice bitter undertone to match the Campari. We're gonna go to Campari next. We're doing 3/4 of an ounce of each. And our last ingredient is going to be Michter's US1 Kentucky Straight Bourbon. And we're going to go just over 1.5 ounces because I like a little extra bourbon in mine. So we're going to stir this to get it chilled down. This is a cocktail that requires a little bit more dilution and chilling than maybe a Manhattan or an Old Fashioned would, just because it has such a high ABV and it has a lot of more complex flavors. So we're going to stir this for quite a bit. That's perfect. That's something that I always recommend is taste your cocktails before you pour them, because you can always amend them in the glass. And that is going to be our Boulevardier at Michter's Bar at Fort Nelson. We're going to make my favorite cocktail off of our new summer menu, the Going for Gold. We're going to start with lime juice, freshly squeezed. And we're going to do pineapple juice. And then we're going to do a batch bottle that is fig leaf syrup, ginger syrup, and a little bit of coconut infused Marti Plata. We make all of that in-house. The ginger syrup is just fresh ginger and sugar sous vide together to melt the sugar. The fig leaf syrup is a 2-to-1 syrup that we sous vide with fig leaves overnight, and that produces a really nice tannic kind of coconut flavor. And that comes together with the coconut rum that we also make in-house by toasting coconut and then vacuum infusing the coconut into the Marti Plata. We put all that together just to make it a slightly easier pickup. And then the last ingredient was 1.5 ounces of Michter's US1 American whiskey. This cocktail we need to shake pretty vigorously to air up that pineapple and get it really nice and cold. So we're gonna do that now. So we're going to double strain this to keep out any ice chips. And this cocktail is actually Haley Trent's recipe. She's one of our newest bartenders. This is probably her second drink on a menu, and it is fantastic. The garnish for this cocktail is just a little bit of lime zest. Keeps it nice and kind of bright, refreshing. And guys, that's the Going for Gold. Thank you for being here.
Now you know all about the Michter story and the experience here at Fort Nelson. And as fascinating as it was also delicious. And as you know, it's all about the whiskey. Thank you for watching Uniquely Louisville, and we'll see you next time.